Second lag, I think. Oh, okay. Okay, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Today is January 19th, and welcome to the Ways and Means briefing. And today is a special day because for all of you who have been here on Ways and Means, and this is my second session as chair, this is the first time we have SSTAT coming in and presenting. So let's give them a big welcome. We're very excited about that. So for those that are new, because this will be kind of a refresh for returning members on this committee, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation, or SSTAT, it is commonly referred to, is an important agency for this particular committee because of its role in administering property taxes. SSTAT assesses all real and personal property in the state of Maryland. It also administers several important statewide property tax credit programs. In recent years, SSTAT has also assumed an important role in helping homeowners in tax sales. Local governments are responsible for setting property tax rates, administering local property tax credits, and collecting property taxes. This committee, the Ways and Means Committee, has worked successfully with SSTAT in recent years to improve access to property tax credits and reform the tax sale process to help homeowners. I look forward, and I'm sure all of you look forward, to continuing our productive relationship with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. And with that, I will turn it over to Michael Higgs, the director.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that fabulous introduction, and thank you all for having us here today. We are thrilled to be here to share the great work that SSTAT is doing on behalf of the people of Maryland, and to talk about some of the areas that we cooperate with the Ways and Means Committee on. And we're also happy to take any questions that you have after the presentations that our team is here to give to you guys relating to the 4 specific questions that were posed to us in advance of the hearing. I brought with us today Silma Raymond, who's head of our tax credit programs. Stephen Clampett, to my right, is our associate director and head of our business services unit. Dan Phillips is our state supervisor of real property. And Robert Yeager is head of our homeowners protection program. I'm Michael Higgs, director of SSTAT, and we are happy to be here today, and we're going to start off with the first presentation.
Here, excuse me, Dan Phillips, State Supervisor of Assessments for the Real Property Division. We're going to go through and just do a brief overview of our methodologies and our jobs that we do. The Department of Assessments and Taxation took over the assessment functions from the counties in 1975 in order to provide fair and equitable real property assessments through the state. As part of this, we have 2 main clients groups. State and local governments that we provide the taxable assessment information to for them to then use to prepare their tax bills when they do their billing each year. This is the vital service that all the jurisdictions depend on for collecting property tax revenues, and it's done consistently throughout the state. The other big group of clients is property owners in the state of Maryland. The department goes to great strides to be fair to both of these groups. We are not, I guess, trying to shift anything to create more tax revenue for the local jurisdictions. We're not trying to reduce property assessments for a particular group of property owners. We are trying to be objective and fair to all parties involved. Each county is divided into 3 groups, and we have these labeled as GO 80, 81, and 82 because that was the first period when we went to triennial assessments. The Group 1 was last reassessed for January 1 of 2022, date of finality. It included 746,000 plus parcels of land. And that year, as a result of those appeal notices or assessment notices we sent out, there were 24,136 appeals that were filed and processed by the department. Our Group 2 was last dated or valued for this January 2023 data finality. It included over 827,000 parcels. In 2020, which was the last year we did a reassessment, this group, we had 30,130 appeals processed. We've had about 8,000 so far this year from the recent reassessment notices that have sent out. And that appeal period will continue until February 12th for those notices. Under state law, they have 45 days from the date of the notice to file an appeal. This year, they happen to get a bonus day because it falls on a Sunday, so we allow to be fair to everybody, we allow them to file an appeal by the end of the next business day. Our Group 3 properties will next be valued for January 1 of 2024. We are actively performing that work now. That group includes over 813,000 parcels. And in 2021, when it was last appealed or last valued, it generated 31,594 appeals. For all of our assessments, real property is valued at full cash value. This is defined as market value, the most likely price the property would sell for in an open market. You get into the technical appraisal definitions, it's each party being knowledgeable, nobody's forced to sell nor buy, so it's an arm's length fair transaction for all parties involved. The exception being the use value, which is applied to agricultural properties. These are properties that are actively being used as farms. They receive a special lower assessment to benefit them with lower tax rates. And we have golf courses and country clubs that are also in the use club because of the open space that they provide. The department uses standard evaluation approaches, same as the private appraisal industry. We look at a cost approach, which is the land value plus the depreciated value of improvements. The market, which is where we're looking at sales of properties and using that to compare to similar properties that have not sold. And the income approach, which is used primarily for commercial property, where we look at the net income generated by the property and it's capitalized into evaluation. Each of these methodologies are standard in the appraisal industry, whether you're having SDAT do the evaluation or you're hiring an outside private appraisal company. In SDAT, we have things broken down into several property types. Residential properties include single-family dwellings, townhouses, condominiums. Commercial properties will include office space, retail, warehouse apartments, hotels, any other business operation type property. When we are gathering information, we collect a number of attributes for the cost approach. These start with the location of the property, the size of any improvements, the type of construction, the quality of the construction, building features such as heating, air conditioning, porches, decks, sunrooms, virtually anything that is physically located on the property, we collect that data. We break everything down into different models, and a model for valuation is some property that has a similar location, a similar quality of construction, a similar style of construction. We have just about 16,000 neighborhoods in the state that are broken down. So a neighborhood may be a large subdivision of properties. It may be a rural area in a particular election district of a county. But that's broken down into those groups. So we're evaluating a large number of properties, and we have those done so that we are looking at properties that have similar characteristics when we value them and look for comparable properties. We do utilize a neighborhood adjustment factor to adjust the cost approach to indicate for what's indicated by the marketplace sale prices. And we use a number of statistical measures that are based on guidelines from the International Association of Assessing Officers. These include a ratio assessment, looking at how close air values are to the sale prices, standard deviations, variances, a number of normal statistical analysis. For residential property, single-family dwellings, townhouses, we do use a hybrid cost market approach to value. In this, we look at sales of land to determine the land values. We determine the depreciated construction cost of the building, where we would look at the replacement cost of that building, minus any physical, functional, or economic obsolescence. We then apply a market-derived neighborhood adjustment factor, and this is where we compare those to the sale price. And we use a statistical validation comparing that to the sale properties. One of the frequent questions we get is the neighborhood adjustment factor, how we come up with that. So I've got this basic information for a property that sells for $430,000. We know from sales of land in the neighborhood that the building lot is worth $100,000. So the sale market indicated value of the improvements is $330,000. Our depreciated construction cost that we've calculated based on everything indicates a $300,000 value for the improvements, which there's a 10% difference in this. So we would use this for we would do this calculation for every sale that occurs in a given neighborhood to determine what is the market indicating compared to our land and improvement values to be adjusted. In this case, it's 110%. Certainly during the last 10 to 15 years when the market was less, we often had things where properties were selling for less than the depreciated replacement cost in the land value. So we may have had a multiplier of 0.9, even 0.85 that would reduce the cost approach to reflect the actual market price that we were seeing. Once we've done the assessment for the property, we do send notices to each property owner on a 3-year basis. So every property that was reassessed for January 1 of 2023 received a notice. And in that notice, the new value is the value currently. We're not projecting, we're not guessing that the value, what's going to be in 2 years, 3 years. That is the current value. However, to be fair to the property owners, the legislature has put in place a phase-in of that system, of that increase in values, so that 1/3 of the increase in assessment is added each year for the next 3 tax years. In this case, the 2020 assessment value was $300,000 in this demonstration, which means for the next, and then for 2023, the assessment value at $360,000, a $60,000 increase. And this year, that 20% increase was not that unusual. But that increase is phased in over the next 3 years. So for the first year of the tax bill, 1/3 of that increase is added, so $20,000 for the next year, the second third, and then the third year it finally goes to the full value. If the property value goes down, which happened a lot in 2012, 11, 12, 13, then the decrease goes into effect for the full 3-year period. When we send the owner notification of assessed value, the notice includes the value information, both the old and the new market value, the value of both the building and the land. There's appeal information, including the appeal deadlines, hearing options, other information, including where they can request worksheets of comparable properties. We do automatically send every person who appeals their assessment a copy of their worksheet and a copy of the sales listing for the neighborhood where they are located. If someone does not appeal their assessment, they can also on that notice request that same information at no cost to the property owner. Appealing an assessment, the first level is the supervisor's level. That's where the property owner has the opportunity to present information and meet with or talk with someone from the local assessment office. If they are unsatisfied with that result of that, there is a second level, which is the Property Tax Assessment Appeal Board. The appeal boards are members of the local community that are appointed by the governor's office, so they are completely independent from SDAT. They hear information. Both sides have an opportunity to present data about what they think the property value should be, and they make a decision. If the property owner is still not satisfied, they have the opportunity to file an appeal with the Maryland Tax Court. They do have to follow each of these administrative steps. They can't just skip one and go immediately to the tax court. The next slide just shows that we have 2022 homestead caps. These are for owner-occupied residential property, principal residence. So it has to be where you live most of the year, 6 months in a day. The property that you use for your driver's license, filing income taxes, and so on. This limits the taxable value. So in the example I gave earlier where the property went up 20%, in some jurisdictions that is limited in that you may not pay tax on the full amount. And this ranges from a 10% cap, which is what the cap rate that's used for the state of Maryland and Calvert County and Montgomery County, down to Talbot County, who has a 0% cap rate, which means the taxable assessment for properties there that's the principal residence do not go up. Their assessment still may increase as far as the value of the property, but they don't pay tax on that the full assessment value. We certainly also have a website. I think probably one of the most visited sites in the state. Property owners, appraisers, realtors all use our website daily. We have on that information about our assessment processes, listings of local offices, county tax rates, our procedures, a real property search where someone can look up anybody. We frequently have people come in, they want to know information about their neighbor, but they can look at it all free of charge on our website. We do have property classifications there as far as the use for commercial properties and forms for address change requests, exemption applications, etc. Does anyone have any questions regarding this or want a further explanation of any part of this?
Is anyone else presenting?
We have all of our presentations keyed up. You want to just go through the presentations?
Yeah, and then we'll do questions at the end, yeah.
Good morning. I am Selma Raymond. I'm the program manager for the State Department of Assessments and Taxation's homeowners.
Does that mic move a little bit closer to you, just to make sure everybody can hear you?
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Again, I am Selma Raymond. I'm the program manager for the State of Maryland homeowners, renters, and homestead tax credit eligibility programs. I'm basically going to give you a brief overview of the 3 tax credit programs that are administered by SDAT. I'll begin with the Homeowners Tax Credit Program. So the state of Maryland actually established the Homeowners Tax Credit Program back in 1978. And what this program does is it basically provides property tax relief for our homeowners. So there is a limit that's set on the property taxes that one has to pay based on their property taxes. Now, before we actually look at income, there are 4 important requirements that must be met. The first is that the homeowner must have a legal interest in the property. They must also meet residency requirements. And then they also have to meet certain income and net worth requirements. There is a formula that we actually use to determine eligibility for tax credit that basically says if you have X amount of dollars in income, you should only be paying X amount of dollars in property taxes. If your property tax bill is more than what that formula says your income can handle, then you're eligible for a homeowner's tax credit. Now, if we get an application from one of our applicants by April 15th of each year, we're actually mandated by law. If we have an application that's complete, we have everything we need, then we can actually get that tax credit onto the very first tax bill that's issued in July. What happens is if the applicant applies after that April 15 filing deadline, if the taxes have not been paid in full, they get a full tax bill come July. Once the credit hits, what will happen is they will receive a revised property tax bill that reflects the tax credit. If the property taxes are paid in full, then once the credit hits, then the homeowner is actually eligible for a refund. That's basically how the program works. Now, the filing deadline for our applications for homeowners tax credit, and it's an annual filing, is October the 1st of every single year. And again, our applicants must apply every year. There is an exception for our applicants who are age 70 or over. Those individuals, as long as they did not receive a tax credit in the previous year, they can actually submit an application for 3 years retroactive. Moving on to, well, before I move on to renters, there are some statistics that I'd like to share regarding the homeowners tax credit program. In 2021, the department received approximately 61,000 applications. The number of homeowners tax credits that were issued were about 38,000. And in terms of dollars issued, the department issued approximately $55.4 million with an average tax credit of $1,465 statewide. Moving on to our renters tax credit program. That program was actually established back in 1980. In order to be eligible for the renters tax credit, you have to be age 60 or over, or 100% totally and permanently disabled. In 1984, the program was expanded to those individuals who were under the age of 60, but those applicants have to meet certain poverty threshold guidelines in order to qualify for renters tax credit. Our applicants can receive anywhere from $1 to $1,000 each year. Again, this application has to be submitted annually. The filing deadline for our renters program is October 1st of each year. And again, we have to get an application from our renters every single year to be eligible for the program. In terms of our renters tax credit statistics, in 2021, the department received approximately 9,500 applications. The number of our renters tax credits that were issued were about 6,600. And in terms of dollars, we issued close to $3 million in our renters tax credits, with an average renters tax credit statewide of $446.37. Moving on to our homestead tax credit eligibility program. The homestead tax credit actually limits the increase in the taxable assessment value each year to a fixed percentage for primary residence homeowners. So as of 2018, an application is actually required for individuals to apply for the homestead tax credit. Each county and municipality in Maryland is required to limit the increase to 10% or less. And how are we determining homestead eligibility? So to qualify for eligibility for homestead, the property must be the primary residence of at least one owner who is listed as an owner of record, and a one-time application. So as long as you live in the property, you only have to apply one time only, and that is filed with the department, and the application undergoes a review process to ensure that the home is in fact owner occupied. In terms of our homestead tax credit eligibility statistics, as of December 31st of 2022, we've received approximately 1.1 million applications, and we have approved, as of that date, approximately 1 million properties. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this information with you. For additional information regarding all of these tax credit programs, you can access the department's website at www.dat.maryland.gov. Thank you.
Opportunity. I'm sorry? Oh, there we go. Okay. My name is Bob Yeager. I'm the State Tax Sale Ombudsman. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to tell you about the Ombudsman's office and the work we do there, as well as introduce you to our latest tool to help Maryland homeowners navigate the tax sale process. Next slide. So what we do in the Ombudsman's office, our goal is to help Maryland homeowners navigate the tax sale process by providing the best information, resources, and assistance available. And that's to the goal of paying their delinquent property taxes improving their financial situations, and keeping their homes. So next slide, please. So here's how we do it. We provide information. First of all, we identify where the homeowner is in the process. We explain the tax sale process. We listen to all of the situations they're dealing with and find out where they are in that process. We look up their property in the real property database, see what the status of their property is. We look up their county property tax bill on the county finance websites and get information to them and make sure they understand what's happening. Then, based on that information, we connect homeowners with the appropriate resources. That can be tax credits, grant programs, housing and financial counseling, legal service providers, nonprofit organizations, other government agencies, whatever their specific circumstances require. The third thing we do is facilitate communications. Sometimes the problem is just connecting with the right person to find out the right information, or talking to the right person to get your situation resolved. So we work with homeowners to connect with whoever the contact is they need to talk to. If they're hitting a wall, reaching a contact at a program, or another state agency, or another organization that they had initially started working with, we help facilitate those communications. And that leads to the other factor, our partnerships. We couldn't do what we do without a vast network of partnerships throughout the state. So it includes all the service providers I went through, but it's also constituent service providers. We partner, for example, if we had an elected official's constituent services has a constituent who's having a property tax issue, we'll collaborate with them and help them reach a resolution with that. And again, help them access whatever resources are appropriate based on those circumstances. And then our partnerships are also a key part of our outreach effort, where we reach local communities by working with the community-based groups that they already know. And then finally is our newest tool, the Homeowner Protection Program, which I'll go into detail in just a moment. Next slide, please. So just some statistics. The Ombudsman's Office launched 3 years ago. We've assisted over 6,000 homeowners so far. We've referred over 45 homeowners to housing and financial counseling, legal services, other benefits programs, and we've helped facilitate the payment of over $18 million in delinquent property taxes to county finances across the state. In our recent homeowner follow-up initiative, which we started in 2022, we found that 96% of homeowners who we contacted for a follow-up to check and see where they stood a year later, 96% of them had successfully avoided tax sale the year after we helped them. So we're very proud of that accomplishment and the work that we're doing, but obviously we're still continually looking for ways that we can improve our service and expand our partnerships with organizations to reach more homeowners. Next slide, please. The other important thing our office does is collect and report data. So each year we conduct the annual tax sale report of the counties, and this is data and information that the counties provide to us about the tax sales in the prior year. And then we put that information, as well as information about what our office is doing and sort of general climate of tax sale that year, into our Maryland annual tax sale report each fall. This is a major collaborative effort with the county finance offices, and it's an important resource for us as we plan our strategies for further assistance, as well as for all stakeholders in the tax sale sort of infrastructure to get a better sense of what's happening in tax sale in a given year. Next slide, please. So finally, the Homeowner Protection Program is our newest tool that we're using to help homeowners. It is an alternative pathway to the tax sale process. It helps homeowners pay off their debt by providing them three things. One, an affordable payment plan. Two, regular and ongoing communications and support from our office. And three, we create an individualized assistance plan tailored to their needs. Next slide, please. So eligibility is for homeowners who are residing in their principal residence. They have a combined household income of $60,000 or less. They have an assessed value on their home of $300,000 or less, and they have no more than $200,000 in total assets other than their home. We also give enrollment priority to homeowners who are 60 years or older, who are currently receiving federal disability benefits, or who have been owner-occupant of their property for 10 years or more. Again, this is to target the most vulnerable homeowners who we can help with this program. Next slide, please. So what we do after enrollment is First thing is we pay off the county tax bill, or whatever the bill is from the county that has put them at risk of being in the tax sale process. Once we pay off the bill, the county removes them from the tax sale process. Now we'll work with the homeowner to determine their needs and create an individualized assistance plan based on their circumstances. Then we will help homeowners access the housing counseling, financial counseling, tax credits, grants, any other resources that are appropriate that are going to help improve their situation. Then we're going to create a repayment plan for the homeowner to repay the debt back to us. So they're going to have a monthly payment where they'll pay back the money that we paid out to the county on their behalf. And then finally, we're going to maintain regular contact with the homeowner to monitor and assist with their progress through the program. Next slide, please. And the Homeowner Protection Program is now live. Now, there's a caveat to this slide. We launched this about a week ago, and this morning I found out that there's a snag on the website, so Department of Internet Technology is working on that to fix it. But if you go to the website right now and you click on the Homeowner Protection Program, it asks for a sign-in, which was not there last several days. But the program is available. There's information in the application on the website. So we're very excited about that. Next slide, please. So with that, we're free to take questions.
Thank you. Do any committee members have questions? Our Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the great presentation and information. I'm sure all the members, new members, and previous members really appreciate the information. Every day I have my staff put together a list of constituent services needs, and they call in to us multiple times and give us information. And I'm just going to read to you one of the notes, the email they sent to me. They said, I need assistance with a property tax issue. Basically, I am missing out on the homestead tax credit because of the incompetence of SDAT. I closed on my house in June 2021. Within days of closing, I sent paper forms applying for the homestead tax credit. I was eligible. I did not receive a response ever. My tax bill increased substantially from 2022 to 2023 tax year, and the credit was not reflected. I must say that I hear this often from many of my residents about the homestead tax credit and also the homestead tax program. And I actually did it myself as well, which is go through and apply for the tax credit, and I found that I didn't receive a response for some time. I noticed that you said that you applied this year. There was a million, or last year was 1 million applicants that came in, and 1.1 of them came in. You approved 1 million of them, and I wonder if, because I didn't receive a notification either about what the next steps were, what's happening with everything, the approval process. Maybe you can walk us through that, what that looks like, what our homeowners should expect, information they should be receiving, because I hear this constantly from for years now. I've been a delegate for a decade now, and I've heard this multiple times that this has come up. So maybe you can provide some clarity for the folks at home watching. Thank you.
I think because we have so many members that have questions, I have everybody's name, so I will call on everybody, and if I haven't called on you when I get to the end, so everybody just go ahead and turn your mic off. And I will call on folks, not in any particular order, but just the order that I looked around the room, and when I get to the last person and I haven't called on you, you can hit your mic, but we'll try the mics now.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so to clarify, in terms of the number of applications that we have received, that's since 2018, since we had the actual requirement for the homestead tax credit eligibility application. I have to start out by actually apologizing. We have had a situation this year where Montgomery County is now requiring all of their residents to submit a homestead tax credit eligibility application. So there was some notifications that were sent out to Montgomery County residents, and this happened back in June. It was in June. So we've had quite a bit of applications that have actually come into our office. A lot of them are paper applications. A lot of our applicants did not file online. So we're actually trying to get caught up in terms of providing our residents with access numbers to actually submit the application for online filing. So we have had that challenge, especially this year.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. Is it a problem of being understaffed or at the current moment, or because of the new law that was passed in Montgomery County? And I'm in Prince George's.
Okay.
So, I heard it from a lot of Prince Georgians as well that, even going through the online process, because you have to send an email, then you have to send some other stuff, and then you wait, and then you get a response, and then at some point you don't receive a response at all about whether or not you've been approved. I'm telling you from personal experience that I have not, and I'm agreeing with my constituent that.
Yeah, because basically what happens is once the approval happens, then you can actually go to the department's website. So it takes approximately 90 days if you actually apply online.
Right.
Now, if you're submitting a paper application, again, with the deluge of applications, paper applications we've received recently because of the new legislation for Montgomery County, we have been, sort of inundated and just trying to get through that paperwork.
Mr. Higgs, how can we fix this issue of communication with applicants for the programs and responses to them in a after the 90 days or directly after the 90 days? The notifications just seem like it's not happening right now.
Yes, thank you, sir. Silma and her team have done remarkable work trying to keep up with literally a tidal wave of paper applications that came in. Montgomery County, without consulting with us, sent out paper applications to all of the residents, telling them they needed to apply. And unfortunately, we have a system that is so old and antiquated. It is on a mainframe system at the Annapolis Data Center. It's COBOL programming, green screen interfaces. The one thing this system has going for it is it's completely safe from hackers unless some group of octogenarians escapes from the old folks' home and decides to go do it. And the problem is I can't hire programmers at government rates to come in and fix our systems. So we need to scrap this system, get off it altogether, and get onto a modern platform. We have not been provided the resources to date to do that quickly. We are in the middle of a transition from a vendor that declared bankruptcy last year that we were working with Do It on for the one-stop, trying to get all of our tax credit programs onto this new system. That vendor has been, the project's been taken over by Ernst & Young, who bought out the vendor. So it's back on track now, I'm told. Stephen can give us more updates on that, but essentially it's a very long road to get off of our rickety technology platform that is holding us back from being able to provide the modern services that Marylanders deserve. So hopefully we can get that resolved very soon.
I think that's a great response of trying to get this moving forward in the new system. So I look forward to your budget request from the new governor to the new governor and trying to improve this system so that we're at least communicating with the applicants that apply. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just have a quick follow-up question, and you may have said it. If not, I apologize. So as far as the paper applications, do you need more bodies there to help process those?
I think certainly those resources would go a long way towards helping us overcome that tidal wave of paper applications that we've received, working out of that.
Okay, thank you. Next, Delegate Barnes and then Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me just start off that, sometimes when we're in these types of conversations, you have to have very frank and sometimes unapologetic conversations. And right now, by the look of my colleagues and the buttons that were pushed because of the questions that want to be asked, I believe that there's a problem. And I think my colleague, the Vice Chair, stated it early by giving an example. And I think, Mr. Higgs, I think you led off by saying some of the wonderful things that the department is doing, but there do I say that there is a problem. And I've been on this committee for the last 9 years, and I've heard some of the repeated things that The systems is old and antiquated, but dare do I say now is a time that we must get this thing fixed. I look back and look at the homeowners tax credit where 61,000 were received and only 38,000 were issued. In the state of Maryland, we have roughly 6.7 million people. How are we getting this information out to the masses? And then how are we getting this information out to those that are in rural areas? And then how are we communicating with our elderly population that may or may not have the technology to be able to respond to this? That's one question. Then I want to go to an issue that we had in Prince George's County where we had some appraisal biases. And I'm looking at Mr. Phillips, where you talked about the appeal process and the collection of assessments. And I'm just wondering, how is that information once again getting out to the masses on the assessments that's needed to ensure that the appeal process is accurate, that the information is correct, and creating the biases for those individuals. So those are some major concerns that I think not only this committee has, but our residents at large. But more importantly, I will give the floor back to Ms. Raymond to talk about how is this information getting out to the masses when we have close to 6.7 million residents here in the state of Maryland, but the people that are receiving it and issuing it, doesn't even hit not even half.
So currently, the department, there's an annual awareness campaign that the department does every year. It's a mailing campaign. We collaborate with the Comptroller of Maryland, where we actually look at those individuals who have income of less than $60,000. We also look at the assessments. So if there's the individuals have assessments of less than $300,000, then we actually mail out postcards to those households, letting them know that the program is available. Every year we mail out about 120,000 postcards to our homeowners, as well as to about 10,000 renters each year. Also, we reach out to those individuals. We do we go to community associations, homeowners associations meetings, where we actually show up and try to promote the programs to let individuals know that the homeowners tax credit program is available. Also, in terms of notifying homeowners that our program is available, the property tax bills that are issued every year does have information advising homeowners to reach out to us for assistance with their property taxes.
Well, let me just say that, once again, this is a repeated common theme that I've heard on this committee year after year. I think that now is the time in which we must look at some new innovative ways in which we're reaching our homeowners. You just indicated that you're doing some HOA meetings. Dare do I say that you're hitting every HOA throughout the state of Maryland? You just said that you mailed out 110,000 postcards when I just gave you the number of 6.7 million homeowners in the state of Maryland. So we are not hitting the masses in a way in which they are able and deserving to receive the tax credits and benefits that your office offers. So I would love to work with you guys. And then lastly, I would like to know, what is the data that shows what areas in which these credits are received? What demographic areas are we receiving those credits in? And what areas are we not receiving those that we need to then focus in on?
We can certainly work on trying to provide you with that information.
Thank you.
And also, just to add to what Selma said about the outreach, there was a 2021 usability study in which SDAT partnered with Towson University to develop some approaches to get the word out a little bit more, to enhance our website, to enhance our application, to make it more readable, to make it more visible. We've definitely taken steps to make more prominent on that landing page, dat.maryland.gov, to have that tax credit logo right and center, that then runs through a basic summary of each of those 3 tax credits and then follows into the application and more information. So we're working hard to make sure that we take those recommendations and find ways to more prominently display these programs.
We've seen an increasing number of applications every year since we started the homeowners tax credit outreach program in 2017, I believe. So the number of applications received every year has gone up. The percentage that are being accepted are going down because people are seeing the outreach efforts and applying, but they fall outside of the parameters that are set by the legislature. The legislative parameters for applying for getting this tax credit have not changed in years while inflation is going up. So we're seeing fewer and fewer Marylanders being eligible for this program in spite of everything going on in the economy. So something, in order to fix that problem, the legislature needs to act.
I just had one last question, and that is centered around the $300 SDAP fee for small businesses to say that they are in good standing. What is that $300 for, and why was it raised from at one point, I believe, was at $150 to now $300?
The $300 fee is an annual fee for the privilege of remaining in business in the state of Maryland. We are anti-competitive with surrounding states with that fee. We have done studies and submitted that to not this committee, but I believe other committees of the legislature, showing that it is more expensive to own and operate a small business in Maryland than it is in the surrounding jurisdictions. Delaware might be an exception in some ways, but they are the home of corporate America, and they have their own special thing going on there. But the $300 fee is something we have submitted legislation to reduce or eliminate in the past. All of that money goes into the general fund, and I believe it accounts for about 800, how much about last time we saw? $80 million a year? Okay, near $100 million a year. So when we've looked at that, at lowering that, it comes with a substantial fiscal note, unfortunately. So, but we would love to see some legislation that makes Maryland more friendly to small businesses. We've been able to do that by raising the floor on business personal property exemptions, so that small businesses with less than $20,000 of original cost of equipment are now exempt from business personal property taxes altogether. So we were able to provide some relief to small businesses in that way, but anything that we can do to help with that $300 fee, we would love to assist.
Well, and that's good to hear, because I have a bill that's coming in to remove the $300 fee altogether. Because for the life of me, I never could understand where that money was going. You're telling me it's going into the general fund. But now that we have a surplus of over $2.5 billion, I believe now it's time that we have a broader conversation, either to lower it or, in my opinion, to remove it altogether. Thank you.
Delegate Ebersol, but I just would like to acknowledge Mr. John Glasser, who is with us. He is head of their legislative affairs, and so that is likely who everyone on this committee would interact with directly. So just wanted you all to know who he was. But Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is 101 for me. And so and thank you, by the way, for your presentations. I'm having a little trouble reconciling two slides. One slide says applications received for homeowners tax credit, approximately 61,000, approved 38,000. Then later, something else that also is on a slide that's titled homeowners tax credit, I see 1.1 million and a million. So what are we talking about different things here? I'm confused about what we're talking about.
That was homestead versus homeowners.
Okay, okay.
And the homestead is a 4-year average since total since 2018.
Okay. It's an average per year?
Not average per, it's the total since 2018 for the homestead
The
applications.
homestead tax credit.
The homeowners was the annual amount.
Okay. The other one is, I just want to make sure I have this right. The example that was used for tax increase for 20% was the number that was used. I gather over 3 years it would be about 6.7% per year on it. Then a slide came with a bunch of counties, and I'm going to get to the slide. I swear I am.
So the homestead tax credit?
Homestead caps, right. And so I see them there. So none of them have a 20% there. No, so is this an annual amount that I see on here? So the only ones that would actually fit into that example would be ones that had an annual of 6.5% or greater, something like that, right? Okay, so the example would only apply to about 3 counties in the state right now because nobody can go up. So if I live in Baltimore County, maybe I do, maybe I don't. If I live in Baltimore County, it feels to me like the most I could see an assessment go up for me for a year would be 4% per year for a total of 12% over the 3-year period. Is that right? Okay, and so I have this right. If I live in Talbot County and I buy a piece of property and I'm starting to pay tax on it, as long as I stay in that piece of property, my property tax will never go up?
County.
Keep in mind, your taxable assessment won't go up. The county can change the tax rate. Which is what they do. So your tax bill may change, but the taxable assessment that
Based
you
on the
pay tax on.
assessment, my tax rate would never increase in Talbot
As
County.
long as that's your principal residence, that is correct.
And this is
But
a
your
county
state
level.
property taxes do increase
Okay,
by
good
up
to
to
know.
10% per year.
Good to know. And this is a county decision, obviously, what they think they can fiscally bear.
Correct.
Okay. One last one, if I may, Madam Chair. Golf courses and agriculture are put together. I'm waiting to get my ear of corn from a golf course. Can hardly wait. You say they're together. Are they treated identically?
No.
Okay.
No. Agricultural properties have rates that are capped out at $500 per acre. By law, the legislature changed, I guess, 2 years ago, the golf course and country clubs, their land is valued at $5,000 an acre.
Okay. And golf course is a big word. Are there any other things that sneak into that definition?
There are golf courses and country clubs. There are 2 separate qualification sections in the law.
Okay.
So for the land for a country club, I mean, they may have tennis courts, they may have swimming pools, and the land used for that country club receives that benefit.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Feldmark and then Delegate Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for being here for this presentation. I think the number of members with questions is a testament to how much we appreciate having you here to have this conversation. So I'm going to start actually with a question that was not on my list, but is a quick follow-up to the golf course and country club discussion. How are buildings assessed within, I mean, you've talked about golf courses and tennis courts and sort of open areas, but country clubs also have buildings and clubhouses and restaurants and things like that. How are those assessed?
The special assessment for the use applies only to the land. All the buildings are valued based on basically a cost of construction minus any depreciation. We do look at properties to see what kind of contributory value we have. We do look at sales of those properties too, to determine how much the buildings contribute to those types of properties. So they do not receive any special tax consideration. It's strictly the land in each of those cases.
Okay. And that's based on their, I believe you used the word open space. So is that?
I have to admit that this law was originally passed before I joined the department 34 years ago. So I don't know the reasoning behind the legislature passing it, but there are particular provisions for the use valuation of those country clubs and golf courses. And what I've always been told is because that they provide open space for the communities.
For the community?
Well,
as in public benefit?
Well,
is that?
That's a
Okay, that's a policy question, not a tax administration
exactly.
question. All right.
I mean, I have to say, when I can go out and play a course that's open to the public, then yeah, it's a benefit. You know, there certainly are country clubs that I'm not allowed on. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Mr. Phillips, actually, I can stick with you for a minute on one of my original questions. So talking about the appeals process, you shared some data about the number of appeals. Did you have what the success rate is on those appeals in terms of how many of the appeals are successful? And I guess the question is how you measure that success, if it's really sort of the full appeal or if it's a...
Well, keep in mind, when we say success, we look at things that are reduced. The assessment is reduced as a result of that hearing. And probably over time, it runs normally 40 to 50% of those. Now, keep in mind also that our appeals typically run 3.5% to 4% of the notices we send out each year are someone files an appeal. So that means that of the properties we reassess, that we typically adjust maybe 2% of them total, somewhere between 1.5% and 2% of all the assessments get adjusted as a result of appeals.
And is that pretty steady over time, or are you seeing any trends in that changing?
Historically, it has changed maybe 0.5% over a course of a year. We might have a year that we get 3.5% of the properties appeal. The next year might be 4%, might be as low. I think for January 1 of 2020, we had maybe 3.1% appealed. The change rate has remained fairly steady over time, and that can be as little as somebody comes in and they make an adjustment, and it's $100 or $200 change in value for something that we were not aware of. And typically, the most frequent thing is that there's something with the property that we are not aware of. We do not go in all the properties. We look at sales properties, properties that have building permits. It's not unusual. I've gone in people's houses that have asked us to come in because they've got settling issues and cracks in the walls. We can't see that from outside. So there are issues like that we deal with.
Okay.
If I can hit real quick on something that Dan mentioned in his slide, the statistics that we use after every reassessment to check the quality of the work that we've done after the fact. The International Association of Assessing Officers, IAAO, has a set of standards that say that you should have your assessment values ending up within between 90% and 110% of actual sale values. And this is how you check your work after. It is our goal every single year to be within 95 to 100%, actually 95 to 99.9%. I never want to take one nickel away from a property owner that by overvaluing their property. But we don't want to shortchange our best customers, the county finance officers that rely on this data for their taxes. So of the last 7 years that we've been running these statistics after the fact, we've come in between 94.5% and 99.9% every single year up until this past year. This past year, we hit a snag because we hit 91%, I believe, give or take, of assessed value. So still within the IAAO's acceptable range, but lower than we like to see personally. We had far fewer sales in the past year when interest rates shot up. Market activity started slowing down. It made it more difficult to hit the actual numbers. And we also have some resource issues in the real property department that I'm happy to talk, I'm unhappy to talk about, but available to discuss if we have any more questions about that.
Okay. And then my last question on appeals, do you have a breakdown of both in terms of number, dollar value, success rate for residential versus commercial properties?
I don't have that with me.
If you can follow up, I'd be
Yes,
interested
we can
to know.
certainly provide that information. We do track that in our systems, but I didn't bring that information here, and I don't have a laptop for myself to pull it up right now.
Okay, thank you. And then moving on, Ms. Raymond, a few questions, and first off, on the homeowner's property tax credit, I do want to say thank you for your time meeting over the interim to discuss some of the issues there. I am disappointed with the technological barriers that the department is facing, and look forward to working with you to improve ease of access there, because I do think if we can find a way to work together with the comptroller's office and actually make that an easy application with income tax filing, we would do a much better job of reaching so many of our eligible taxpayers. But I guess I wanted to get back to the numbers, aside from some serious need to do better outreach, looking at why folks are not qualifying. Do you collect and track data on applications that are rejected, and why? Are there issues other than simply being over the income eligibility threshold?
For the most part, it is because of the income. applicants are not qualifying for the tax credit based on income. You know, the chart, eligibility chart and formula hasn't changed since, what, 1996? So, you know, that's basically what's happening.
And in the homestead, I'm assuming that's the same in the renter's tax credits, primarily in income
Same.
eligibility?
Exactly, because
Okay.
again, it is an income-based program, and unless the formula changes, you
Right.
know, people are actually not eligible because, you know, income is
Right.
increasing and the formula is staying the same, basically staying the same.
Okay.
Yes.
And then for the homestead tax credit, do you actually, so it's a single application, and then you assume continued eligibility until the property changes hands? Is that
Right.
correct?
Well, we do have
Or-
some audits that we actually conduct. We do have audits that we conduct continually, yes.
Okay, so if someone buys a new home, keeps ownership of their old home and starts renting it out, do you have a way to find out about that other than through these audits?
Well, it would be basically our MVA audit that would actually catch that, or
Okay.
people actually call us up and say, hey, you know, this person moved out, you know, they're still getting a homestead tax credit. That happens quite a bit.
Okay, okay, thank you very much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
We, our budget allocation has a special allocation, I believe, to contract with an outside firm that utilizes big data sources to find out who should be eligible for their homestead and who should not be eligible for the homestead. So find that out very soon this year, hopefully. And Dan has something?
Just wanted to, as we were talking about notifying people, just a couple things that, number one, every assessment notice that we send out, page 2 has homeowners tax credit information, homestead tax credit information, how to apply, where to get the information. So every assessment notice, when we send out 778,000 of those for January 1 of 2023, everyone has that information. The other thing for new buyers, and this is something the legislature has put in place, the closing agents are required to have a notice to them that is eligible. So they are all made aware when they're going at settlement. Whether or not they read through that among all the pages and pages of documentation is another matter. But that is something that the legislature has put in place to make sure that people are notified when they buy a home.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Mr. Yeager. I represent a district where we have a large number of persons who live in rural communities, and unfortunately, some without internet connection. So my interest is really piqued regarding the homeowner protection program, regarding whether or not you have statistics and who are some of the partners, so that we can make sure that all citizens recognize that you're there to assist them. We have quite a number of people who are losing their homes or have issues with tax sales. We have persons who are concerned with air property, et cetera. So if you can provide that for all of us, will be very useful and very helpful. You can send it as a separate document later on.
Sure, and I would say, like I mentioned in the presentation, our biggest tool for reaching local communities, because we're just based in Baltimore City, is working with the local partners. So what we would do is, first of all, the Homeowner Protection Program was just launched this week, and we're actively working on outreach to local communities to get those paper applications to them or get the electronic version to them, to an organization that can print them out, who has a connection to the local community. So, for example, I would welcome the opportunity to talk with your office and find out where you're located, what community you're talking about. We have we have a network of partners in every county in the state, and we have nonprofit organizations. We have service groups that help people fill out applications that will work with them to get the paper application mailed into us. And I'm happy to work that with you. But that's where we are right now. We just launched this new program.
Thank you very much. That's helpful to know because many of us have newsletters and we can include that information in our communiques. Thank you.
Delegate Charles and then Delegate Hartman.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have two questions in particular, and my question stems from the conversation we were having about the country clubs just recently. And one of the things that you brought up was the cost of construction valuation for the buildings on the properties. And it's typically at cost, what you're saying, the cost of construction. And so that's a little troublesome and problematic for me, only because we're dealing with a problem within Prince George's County where it's actually a part of this whole appraisal bias issue that we're dealing with. We've had people spend $1 million+ to build a house, and then the house turn around and then be valued at $800,000 or $700,000. But we have country clubs within the state of Maryland who can spend $1 million and then be valued at $1 million. And so when we start talking about theft of wealth in the communities across the state of Maryland, this is a very problematic issue. So how do we get these things in alignment? You know, I love to work with you all to figure out how we align this and fix this problem so we're not seeing values of homes depreciate at such a rate that's not existent in the country club community. So we can address that first, and then I'll go to my next question.
Certainly, anytime you have something where you're particular, a home property is off, I generally think it's fairly unusual. I mean, we get information, I will say in Prince George's County, it's a little bit different in that from 23 counties, we get building permits, including an estimate of construction cost. Prince George's County does not provide us that information. We have a bill-in requiring that with all the building permits. Each jurisdiction is required by law to provide us with a copy of the building permits, but the county does not provide that. What they have told us is that they do not collect that information because their permits are not based on the construction cost, so they don't even collect it. But when we look at that, we want to make sure that every home in that neighborhood is assessed in a uniform manner. As far as the country clubs go, you know, that's a whole different matter in that we look at what the estimated construction cost of those country clubs are. We try to value them properly. What we have seen is that a number of them have failed so that when they sell, they are selling for substantially less than what it may be for the construction cost. I know one of the ones up in Cecil County that went to auction last year, the buildings alone certainly that cost well over the amount. They did not even get a $500,000 minimum bid to buy the golf course and buildings. So the market value of some of those properties is dwindling. It depends greatly on the location of the country club. I know that with the exception of, I think, Talbot County Country Club, every country club on the Eastern Shore has basically closed down. We've had that seen that in many of our rural areas. The other ones have. I know I happened to be out in Cumberland last year, and I played Cumberland Country Club. They have opened up to the public where they allow the public to come in and play there. But we certainly have other courses that are in metropolitan areas that are very exclusive, that are not in the same situation, and we feel that they are appropriately valued. The others, we are reflecting some of the economic obsolescence that occurs in those rural marketplaces. But we want to make sure that certainly any of the homes are uniformly valued and not that amount. There are certainly times where, as somebody spends money on a house, that we're not aware of what's in there. You know, there are times that we are aware based on the permitting cost. You know, when you get into something, a number of years ago, Michael Boyardee of the Chef Boyardee family built a house, and you know, we were fortunate enough that they were up front to know that, you know, they imported marble from Italy along with craftsmen to build it. So sometimes we find out that information. Other times people spend money on something like that, and we're just not aware because we don't have the opportunity to go inside the property. We will go to the outside of the property, measure it, get all the information that's available from the exterior. But there are sometimes that people put things in the houses that we are just not aware of until it comes from sale. Once they're sold in the MLS, we do have access to the multiple listing system used throughout the entire state. we can look at all the pictures, look at all the remarks about were there any concessions, how long was it on the market, what was the closing date. So we have that information available to you, and we do utilize that to make sure that our records are as accurate as possible.
All right, well, appreciate you on that.
One quick follow-up point. The reformed lawyer in me has to make this legal point here. Assessed value can only be used for the issuance of tax bills. Under the law, that is the one and only purpose of the assessed value. It can't be used as evidence in the court of law for other things. It's been thrown out many times for that. It is the one and only thing it can be used for by law. And we occasionally get people appealing their assessment because they want a higher assessment because they're worried that the government can come take their property or something based on the assessed value. And we make them sign a waiver before we will increase their assessed value, stating that they know the one and only purpose of that. So another part of our education campaign we need to get out there, and we could use all the help we can get, is the assessed value means nothing other than the rate at which your taxes are applied to your property.
All right, well, appreciate you guys on answering that question. And my second question is centered around some of our veterans, the 100% service-disabled veterans through VA. And I'm not sure if you all manage the program or if that's something that's pushed down to the counties, but just like our vice chair, he got some emails from his constituents. I, too, got some emails from constituents as well. One in particular, I just looked over the email again, and it took them 5 months from when they initially put in their request and submitted the application showing that they were 100% service disabled, 5 months to get this application approved. And then after it was approved, they still, till this day, I just texted the constituent, till this day have not been reimbursed for the taxes that they paid on the property, being that they're 100% service disabled. And so these are some of our most vulnerable citizens, folks that have come back from combat with all types of trauma. Some of these folks aren't working. And we need to take care of our veterans. We just brought in a brand new governor who's a combat veteran. I think this is something that we really want to circle around and make sure we protect those vulnerable citizens coming back from serving our country. So one, I want to figure out why is it taking 5 months to get this process approved? And then two, why is it taking so long from an application going in June for our veterans to be receiving reimbursement from the taxes that they've been paying on the properties when they qualify for no taxes?
A couple of things. Generally, most of our veterans' applications are processed within 2 weeks. There are times, and one of the big things that we've run into is that by law, they're required to have the VA certify on a form that the person is 100% completely, totally, permanently disabled. Very often, it takes a long time to get that back from the VA. We have a hearing today on a bill to change that, or in addition to that, allow them to simply provide us with a copy of their statement of benefits stating when they were permanently disabled, trying to make this easier for the veteran to apply. That's been one of our biggest holdups, is getting that certification from the VA in order to comply with the law. So we are trying to get that changed. We certainly hope that passes today because it will make life easier for the veterans applying for that. And I will say, if you have something like that, let us know. I get calls every once in a while from a veteran who's having an issue. My two biggest things that we run into are that authorization, or the approval from the VA where they've signed the document, and sometimes the case of they've bought the property and it has not been transferred to their name yet. That's typically because the title company has not provided it in a timely fashion, or the clerk of the court, it's not been available to us. We don't have much problem with that except in Baltimore City. Baltimore City, we do have they've had a tremendous backlog of deeds. I don't like to throw anybody under the bus, but we do regular studies with there, and I've dealt with a few veterans there, and it's taken 6, 7, 8 months before the deed's even available to have the property transferred to them. And I find that unacceptable, but it's outside of our authority. Once we get the process, we should have a letter sent out to the veteran within the 2-week period. We then send the information to the county with with a date that they, or an amount that has to be refunded. Once again, once we provide that to the local tax jurisdiction, it's out of our hands and how long it takes to get processed. The legislature, I believe it was last year, may have been 2 years ago, allowed us to authorize a refund from the date that the declaration of disability was declared instead of from the date they applied. The veteran has to request that. So one of the things we did as an agency was we put a simple checkbox on our every application for the veteran to just have to check off that I want my full refund. We didn't want them to have to ask for it separately, file another piece of paper. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to request that under the law.
And one more question, Madam Chair. This one, we passed a bill, I believe, 3 years ago. I think it was enabling legislation that lowered the threshold from 100% down to, I believe, 60%. And I think the counties have to enable that legislation, but I want to hear from you guys on record about that to allow for veterans who are 60% or higher to have a staggered taxation on their property.
If that was passed, it is a county local option, and we do not administer that.
And I don't believe any counties have taken up that option and lowered their threshold yet. And if I could follow up one more thing. If any of you guys ever have constituent issues involving SDAT, get a hold of this young man right here, Jonathan Glazer, and your stuff will be handled like that. We take care of every constituent concern that reaches our office as quickly and expeditiously as we can. It doesn't just have to come from a legislator when our customers get frustrated and outside of the normal course of business reach out to us. We make sure that they get served and these things don't just languish out there. So please let us know.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you for being here today. I have a few questions just to help me understand things, and I have a concern. So on a homestead application, there's an access number that you need to file the homestead application. What's the reason? It seems like it's just an extra step. What does that access number do, and why is that extra step necessary?
Access code is part of our legacy IT system. Something that was built in when the homestead credit came to be and was built into our mainframe, and it's something that we are desperate to be able to strip out of there and to streamline. Unfortunately, right now, going back to the limited IT resources that we have, it's something that remains an impediment to quickly getting our applications in the system. As part of our current development of getting our renter's tax credit, our homeowner's tax credit, and our homestead applications in the Maryland One-Stop portal, that access code, the need for the access code will drop away, even if the back-end IT doesn't entirely change. However, right now, because of the years that project has gone on, our renter's tax credit refresh to the online filing process is scheduled to go live here in February, but the homestead and the homeowners will be February of 2024.
So in the next year, that'll go away. So in the meantime, if I have a constituent that's trying to get through that first hurdle, what's the easiest way for them to get that access code?
You can actually email, either email. You can email.
Right, use
or
that
call
email,
us.
but the time frame for the return is, that's
You
what I'm
can
saying, what's the best way for them to expedite? I mean, if they call the local
You can call, you can also call us.
state or county?
It would be state.
Okay.
You could either call us or email.
What, is there a good number for
Yes,
people to?
it's
okay.
410-767-2165.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, the real property search, often the address, when I go to the SDAT and do a real property search, the address will come back, and I know you don't use street suffix and all that kind of stuff. It'll come back, address not found. I wish that would happen with my tax bills, but why is it that that website always has a problem finding the address when you're trying to reach information about buyers, sellers, or whatever?
Well, we work very closely with the Department of Planning, getting all of our data matched up to the Department of Planning's. But mailing addresses aren't always compatible with the actual parcel address. Dan, you can take the detail on why that is.
Yeah, each one of the parcel addresses, what we try to do is use official 911 addresses from the local jurisdiction. We typically get a list of those, updates from them on a regular basis, information on the new page. There are times, depending on the jurisdiction, that they will not issue an actual address. They will give us just a street number name, but they won't give us a building number until that building has a use and occupancy permit.
These are old properties,
But
and
there's-
it's inconsistent in the search. Like, if I want to go back and look at it for, multiple times, whatever, one day it'll work, the next day, it seems like it doesn't work. The problem is more consistent than saying it's a mailing address problem. These are established properties, 40, 50 years old, and it seems like utilizing that system is challenging.
I certainly, first of all, would recommend just putting in like the first 3 letters of a street address when you're looking for a street.
Okay.
There are some discrepancies that we run into with, say, 4th Street. Is it 4TH or is it 4th FOURTH? And sometimes the local jurisdiction will give us different things along the same street. So we may have it entered based on what the local jurisdiction has given us. Here in Annapolis, I know I looked into one of those recently, and the street signs are 4TH. Part of the properties are listed that way, but the official street name is FOURTH. So we get different information. I wish they would give it to us the same. And we probably should just say, heck with what the local government says and change them all to one thing, but we've not done it. Partly that's a matter, you've got to have people to go in and physically compare everything street to street.
I'm going
and
to
change
try the
them.
first 3 letters, hopefully that'll help. The commercial property valuation, you said you use the income approach, and it's based on income. So with the commercial property, it's usually tied to a cap rate. What cap rate how do you change that cap rate? What cap rate are you using right now for those valuations?
Well, nobody likes to hear it, but as I often start answers, it depends. It depends on the location of the property. It depends on the local market. We do subscribe to some national services. PricewaterhouseCoopers does an investor survey of what their expected returns are, what kind of capitalization rates their buyers are using when they're buying properties. We use that. We subscribe to Real Estate Investment Services that also does the same thing. We look at local rates because no matter what you do, when you go to a national site, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they break down into Maryland. They'll have a DC market, Maryland market. But realistically, when you start looking at hotels in Ocean City, they may be different than other jurisdictions and something that's in Bethesda. So wherever possible, we use the local information to determine those and calculate them. We'll look at sale prices, and recently the Dunes Manor Hotel sold. We have information on what their income was the last year. We can look at then that sale price and back into what the market indicated the capitalization rate would be.
I'm talking more of the standard triple net properties that you see, the Dunkin' Donuts, the McDonald's, the Dollar Generals. It's more or less like buying an annuity, and it's based on the interest rates. And it doesn't seem like your reaction is as quick to reflect with interest rates. You know what I'm saying? It seems like something missing that could be generating a lot of the assessments.
Well, once again, it depends on the location, depends on the type of properties. You know, we've seen in the last few years apartments that used to be maybe an 8 or 10% capitalization rate, and the market rates the last few years have been about 4.5%. So those are things that fluctuate over time. We try and look at that and update those each year. As is typical with most real estate, things can fluctuate even throughout the year. So we are looking at what is typical and what the typical investor is looking for.
Follow up real quick on that. Our commercial property assessment function is something extremely important to the state of Maryland. We are up against a massive resource problem with commercial assessors. We can't keep commercial assessors employed in the state of Maryland. When we have one trained up, they leave us and go somewhere else and get paid 50 cents more on the dollar. They go to DC, they go to Fairfax, they go to Loudoun, they go to other Pennsylvania, they go everywhere else but staying here because we have a salary crunch and we've even lost them to other departments of the government. So we really need to look at our commercial assessment function very hard in this next year and determine whether we're going to outsource this or whether we're going to put the resources into hiring and training and retaining, the most important part, the necessary level of qualification that it takes to conduct this extremely complicated function that we have here in the state that everyone else outside of Maryland does at the county and municipal level. And we have a problem with the resources because of disincentives, I believe. The incentives are placed in an odd spot here. The counties pay 50% of the budget for our real property assessments. We do 90% of the work we do goes to their revenue. 10% of that revenue comes to the state. Now, the counties don't really have much say in the budget of the real property organization. They're not coming in and saying, please spend more money so we can give you more and increase the revenue. The state hasn't been increasing the budget. In fact, it's been 7 budget decreases in a row and reversion targets that we've had to hit. So this program is at a crossroads, and we need to discuss very frankly what we're going to do going forward.
Well, I can't imagine it being put in private hands. I like, small government, but at the same time, that would, it's such an important and critical role. I think it has to be held sacred. The last thing is the appeal process. You said, and I think it was, forget who it was that was talking on the appeal process, but you said we meet with or talk with for an appeal. And I hope those words are still true with meet with. I had a constituent reach out to me and say that they weren't, a face-to-face interview. I've always opted for them. I know I have the attention of that person. I know it's being considered. You kind of read them if they're understanding or whatever. You can reiterate certain things, and it's a much better process to do a face-to-face interview, especially if you're talking about an appeal process, something that may be $2.5 million. And you feel it's $2 million, $500,000 discrepancy with a tax rate of $1.80 or something like that. You're talking about $9,000 a year, difference to that person. I take it serious. When that's not available, I have concern, and I understand that it was a policy decision that was made that goes against state law. State law, I understand, requires the option for a face-to-face interview. My office and the House Republican Caucus sent a letter that we're waiting for a response, voicing our concern that this year that has been taken away in a year when you have huge increase in real estate values, and you take away the ability for that person to meet with their person in government. I have a real concern about that. Can you help me understand if that's true, why that decision was made? I was told it was safety reasons. For COVID, I think we're past COVID. You can see us all sitting here. Somebody needs to feel the need to protect
Absolutely.
herself.
Thank you very much for the question. So since the start of COVID, we did eliminate in-person appeal hearings at the first level, and we instituted last year video appeal hearings in its place. So there are still face-to-face meetings over video. Everyone's gotten used to Zoom over the past couple years, and we found great success with these. It helps our folks schedule them and handle all of the volume of appeals better. And quite frankly, it's also a matter of resources. We need security for our people, and many of our offices are in buildings that are privately owned, and there is no security available. So this is another factor as to why we're not just running back into the in-person appeal hearings. Additionally, PTAB and tax court also allow in-person appeal hearings. So if you do want to stand in front of somebody and have that as opposed to over a video connection, that is still available to you at the second and third level of appeals.
And not everybody is savvy enough and understands Zoom. I mean, I can't imagine a lot of people. I live in an area where it's an older population. Zoom is not something that they're familiar with or feel, that they can use. But is it correct, it's state law to have that available, an in-person interview?
The state law simply says they have to be able to have a hearing. It's kind of weird in that state law says that, and we also have to, by state law, offer telephone hearings. I think it's,
Right.
once again, we're looking at
If you're offering a
semantics, right?
telephone hearing and a hearing, I think they've differentiated telephone hearings by pick up the phone. The other hearing would be in person. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, what other hearing would be available other than a telephone?
Well, telephone, whether you're seeing somebody face to face over video, I mean, certainly we have made every effort when someone wants to come in person, we've let them. I mean, our offices, when the governor closed things down in 2020, we reopened to the public on a limited basis at that time in June of 2020. I will tell you that personally, I had a gentleman from your jurisdiction that was adamant when the state and county offices were closed, he wanted a personal hearing. I volunteered to drive down to Snow Hill to meet him in the parking lot because the county would not allow him in the building. That was a county decision because our office is in the county courthouse. He was not allowed in. I volunteered to go meet him in the parking lot. He chose not to do it because he wanted to come in the office. That was his thing. So, but we've made every effort we can. If somebody wants to come in, if someone tells us, hey, I've got a hearing problem, or we get word from them, that's what we do. We have made every effort to meet with people. What we have found is it's been much more efficient for our limited staff to do telephone, written, and video hearings. We experience on personal hearings about a 40% no-show rate, which means we then have to reschedule them to give them another opportunity to show up. We don't just automatically say, hey, they didn't show up, this is dismissed. We're not allowed to do that. We found much more with written and phone and video hearings. People show up. They do it at a much greater rate than in-person hearings. But if we have the adequate staffing and everything, we certainly are willing to do that.
You talk about adequate staffing. By the time I sign on to a Zoom link and get that person, whatever, to come in, that person still may not show up for the Zoom link. I don't understand how that's making a difference because you're going to have to reschedule that. The amount of time I talk through Zoom is no different than the amount of time I talk face-to-face. If we were upstairs on Zoom, this conversation that you and I are having would take just as long as it would if we're sitting here in person. Nothing's been abbreviated by it. So for you to say that it helps with staffing, I don't agree with that. I think we're taking away something from the public that they rightfully deserve.
Okay.
I think that was a rhetorical question. Delegate Hartman, thank you. He's my former judiciary colleague, so that was a "isn't that so" kind of question. We got to move on. We got a lot of folks with some questions.
I assume I'll still get a response to the letter.
We received the letter about 36 hours ago. We're endeavoring a response toward that.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Wilkins, and then Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. For me, since we have last been briefed by you all, I actually became a first-time home buyer last year, so I've been listening. Yep. Thank you. So I've been listening extra closely to this briefing for sure, so thank you. And I actually do want to talk a little bit about first-time home buyers, and I wanted to get a sense. I didn't really hear too much about first-time home buyers in the conversation, and wanted to get a sense if there's any special communications to help unpack and help new home buyers understand how all of this works. Any particular mailings or information that goes out to first-time home buyers from SDAT. And also wanted to confirm that we don't have any special tax relief that's specific to first-time home buyers. So we can just talk about first-time home buyers a little bit.
Yeah, so as Supervisor Phillips mentioned in his presentation, the homestead tax credit is presented to new home buyers at any residential home transaction. The buyer is presented with that and explained that you should go to SDAT to apply. And I believe that is the only interaction that we have with new home buyers, correct?
To the notification regarding homestead, homeowners can actually apply on the front end. There is information on the department's website where homeowners can actually, well, before they actually acquire the property, before they go to settlement, they can actually submit an application with the homeowner's tax credit fact of sale, and the department would determine any tax credit that they're entitled to. If they are eligible for a tax credit, then they're able to take any tax credit that they're entitled to in the form of a check to the settlement table, and that pretty much, decreases the amount that they have to come up with at the settlement table. So information regarding that and the ability to do that is on the department's website.
Okay, thank you. And following up with that, I think it's important for us to be pragmatic, though, in terms of the amount of paperwork at closing that is being signed. So I don't think it is reasonable for us to accept that that's a communication, a solid communication with a first-time home buyer in terms of the documents at closing, and maybe there's a paper or a document or a line in the 100 pages that a first-time home buyer, any home buyer is signing, that is adequate information or communication that's being provided. So as we think about the work moving forward with SDAT, I think it's critical that we really come up with more realistic ways to communicate this homestead tax credit with first-time home buyers. And I wanted to confirm that first-time home buyers do qualify. It's that for the tax credit. I just wanted to make that explicit for the homestead. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. I want to follow up on the appraisal issue. This has come up several times during our briefing today around appraisal bias, and I want to really underscore this, that this is a national issue of epic proportions that has major implications all throughout our state. We have major banks like Chase that are working to address this issue, and it is something that is certainly impacting Marylanders as well. And so I wanted to make sure I understood, because the way that banks are doing their appraisals versus SDAT is doing their appraisals. Can you just walk me through a little bit, since I just went through my own appraisal process that was more through a bank and the home buying process, sort of the types of appraisers that you are using, and are you all kind of a comparison? Are you all going into homes and taking a look around? If you can just share a little bit more about that. I know other people might be familiar with the differences, but I want to make sure I understand that.
Certainly when it comes to this, there is a current study going on with Department of Housing and Community Development. Director Higgs is on that task force to study this issue in the private appraisal industry, and it is looking at the assessment office also. I know I drafted the response to Delegate Barnes when this was brought up to us a couple years ago after I think it was USA Today did a study or republished a study that was done on racial inequities in assessments. One of the things that they had done, they had looked at Philadelphia, they had looked at Chicago, and I believe an area in California. One of the things they mentioned was that they wanted us to, or they felt that assessments should be broken down into areas smaller than census districts or zip codes. I outlined in that report, and I've got a copy of what I submitted or what I prepared. We prepared for Delegate Barnes and for Delegate Kaiser when we did that. And for example, in Maryland, there are 481 area-specific zip codes. We have, instead of using 481 areas for breaking down and looking at similar properties in similar neighborhoods, we have 16,840 individual neighborhoods, so that we're not comparing something in Potomac to something in Silver Spring to something in Upper Marlboro.
And sorry to interrupt you, I just want to make sure that I'm getting to the type of response I'm looking for. I am just trying to understand a little bit more, kind of a comparison in terms of how the state is developing their assessment versus something that someone would go through in terms of when you're in the home buying process. What I'm trying to get at is how much our state is susceptible to those same types of biases that we know are well documented, particularly around the more, commercial process, appraisal
Right.
process.
Yeah, and just so for your information, I am a certified general appraiser. So I am licensed to do appraisals in the state of Maryland. I do not do any private appraisal because it would be a conflict of interest with the work of the department. But I have been a licensed appraiser for 29 years since the licensing requirements went into place. So I am familiar with the private appraisal process. I have a number of friends that are in that industry. The private appraiser, and one of the big differences, we have looked at every property. We have been out and measured every property. So we have the basic attributes of each of those. When we do our assessments, we are using that information and we are comparing what each of those properties has sold, that have sold in the neighborhood, to the properties that have unsold. The biggest difference in the private appraiser is they are going out to look at one house and the features there. They have some certain restrictions. We may look at sales that have occurred in the past year and a half to get enough sales data to feel we do it accurately. Fannie Mae may require them to use only sales that have occurred within the last 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, depending on the lender, that they may not have as many sales to look at. As a result of that, they typically may go outside of that neighborhood to find sales data, and then they have to make adjustments for that. I mean, I certainly have read the situation of the professor at Johns Hopkins who had an appraisal done of his house in Homewood. I found it quite appalling, the fact that they had an appraisal done for refinancing purposes that came in quite low from the articles I've read in the Sun. They then took down art that they felt was indicated that the home was owned by an African American, including artwork and family photos, and had a different appraiser come in and appraise significantly higher. I found it quite appalling. And that's as a licensed appraiser. You know, there's a code of ethics. You know, we make our assessors go through and take a class on ethics in appraisal. As an appraiser myself, I have to go through and follow and do an USPAP, Uniform Standards and Practices of Appraisal. Every 3 years I have to do that. And I found it just horrible what they had done.
Are we using the same pool of people?
No,
the state?
No. When you have a private appraisal, they are working for an outside company. When you buy that house and they say it appraised or it didn't appraise for the purchase price, they're using a private appraisal company that's an individual. A number of years ago, the federal law changed, and whether it's for the better or not, it's up to them. It used to be that your bank could say, hey, we know we trust this appraiser, and we want to assign the work to them. They felt that was not independent enough. So now they have appraisal management companies, and essentially your bank would go and say, we need an appraiser to do this house, and they pluck one out of a jar. It's like a lottery ball popping up, and that's how your appraiser gets assigned for a private appraisal. Hopefully they're qualified. I don't know that they all are, but hopefully they are. But it's almost the luck of the draw in who you're assigned when your lender chooses an appraiser. All of our people, we hire them. We go through, we take standard appraisal classes that we offer through the IAAO. We just finished last week. I think we had 82 people in one of 4 different classes on evaluation, the practices and principles of appraisal. One on mass appraisal, because we utilize that where we're looking at the statistics. We do an income class and an advanced income class for training our assessors. They are all working in-house. When we get down there, we try to make sure that everything is as fair and as uniform within those neighborhoods as possible.
Thank you. Last thing on this. So given just the well-documented instances of appraisal bias, have you implemented any sort of bias training? Is there anything been added to the classes that you provide for your appraisers to make sure that at least on the state level that we're able to make sure that we are managing and accounting for any potential bias that could be taking place?
We have not instituted any additional training at this time. I will keep in mind that the supervisors of assessments that we are, and our staffing, I think that when I did this, we had, at the time I did the letter, that minority, or supervisor assessments are minorities, the people overseeing the local assessments, for over 55% of the properties in the state of Maryland. We have a very diverse group of people that work for us, that are all trained, but it is not, I mean, it is, to say, we have not done that because we haven't felt that it's been necessary with the methodologies we have in place to make sure that prices are consistent within neighborhoods and the properties are consistently done. And as I said, the managers of our individual counties, for over half of the properties in the state, are minority.
All right, thank you so much.
Delegate Hornberger, and then Delegate Wu.
Yes, just very quickly. I'll run through these. Where you listed the homestead caps per county, is there a cap on the caps in terms of percentage?
10%.
10%, okay. And that's set obviously by the county, okay? And then on the other question that I had is, what I'm finding in my district is the constituents that really need the HPP, which is a wonderful program, and I've actually had some constituents connect with it, is that sort of generation, the elderly that are in this vulnerable spot, are the least likely to ask for help, apply for help, and they're getting steered into this HPP program because they are in such dire straits. Is there a way to affirmatively identify these folks, seek them out, and then connect them with this program, because they are extremely reluctant to do so?
Well, in the first instance, we do the outreach program to everyone who is potentially eligible for the homestead credit but has not applied previously.
Okay.
So if anyone eligible but hasn't been applying, they will get a postcard from us urging them to apply.
But is that for the HPP?
That is for the homestead tax credit, which is or the homeowner's tax credit, which is the first step in helping people in the HPP program.
Okay.
But Bob's going to tell you about some of the other outreach and way that they help connect them.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the first thing is the Homeowners Protection Program is designed to help people who are at risk of tax sale. The first way homeowners, when they're first at risk of tax sale, they get the tax sale notice letter from the county finance office. That just means that they are about 6 months behind on their property taxes from July 1st. Starting this year, the notifications that are sent out by county finance offices will include our contact information.
Okay, great.
They'll say, if you are at risk of tax, or you are at risk of tax sale, please, there's a homeowner protection program that is designed to help you.
Okay, great.
And contact the ombudsman's office. So that's the first level, and then we're also doing local outreach with local community groups to spread the word to local communities as well.
Okay, thanks, great work, keep it up.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some background on the AVM, the property assessment. I just wonder, you are using a computer program to do the property assessment, right?
We have a evaluation system. I believe it was it started implementation in 2008. It is a little bit clunky. It works for Maryland, but the interface is kind of terrible, and we really need to upgrade that. And we're planning on putting an RFP out sometime in the next year, seeking a more modern, robust evaluation system.
I see. So my question is, when was your program run to get the assessment for January 1st, 2003 property value?
So we've been gathering data, assessing properties all year long, and we put it into our system by November, I believe, and then we start running background reports, start double checking data, and then that generates the assessment letters that go out on or around December 31st of each year.
I see. It's kind of you're running your program around November and December, right? So the reason I'm asking because the housing prices have been up and down recently a lot, right? It depends when you run your program. The property
Absolutely.
value may change a lot, right? And then the tax may be quite different.
Well, we make adjustments in that November timeframe for early assessments based on market moves so that everything at the end of the year is trued up so that your value is set as of January 1st of each tax year. It's all taken into consideration.
So you said you are using the January 1st, 2022?
January 1st of every year is so this most recent one that just went out, it was January 1st, 2023.
Yes, I mean, that's the time you send out the information about the property tax, right?
That's when we send out about the assessed value. The property tax doesn't get issued until July 1st by the county governments.
Okay. So do you have any concerns in terms of housing prices are changing a lot recently?
We follow the market. When the market goes up, assessments go up. The market hasn't gone down, so assessments haven't gone down. We've seen some leveling off of the market. I think we've seen a lot of what would be a steadily increasing market. A lot of those increasing values are being eaten up by interest rates, but we're not seeing real values dropping in Maryland anywhere just yet. It's we're seeing houses on the market longer. So transaction times are stretching out, but it hasn't yet resulted in a real drop in property values.
I see. Thank you. I have a second question about the residents' concern. Right? We hear from our Vice Chair, Mr. Washington, Delegate Washington, and some others about their resident concern about the property tax and the appeal process. I emailed you, appreciate you replied back. I just wonder, is there any process our office can connect with you, then we can organize some sessions, because we have not just one. There are more than 20 residents complain because from Howard County and Montgomery County, our property value goes up so quickly during the last 2 years, right? They really has a concern. And is there a possibility we can connect with your office and then organize some maybe seminar or just Q&A session?
Absolutely. Our county offices, and we have an office in every one of our 24 jurisdictions at present, are happy to get together for community meetings. I will caution that during appeal season, they tend to be extremely busy, but they, I'm sure, would still love to get together and help educate a group of citizens on the appeals process. What we're not going to be able to do is talk about individual accounts at a meeting like this, because they are still subject to appeal right now. But we're happy to educate any groups of citizens on the appeal process. Just reach out to the county office and try to get that going. And if you don't get a good response, get a hold of me and I'll make it happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, we do that. I will say when I was the supervisor of assessments for our county, we regularly, I spoke Lions Club, NAACP, retirement communities. You know, we would go out at their request and go over that. The one thing we typically don't have is all the information to address a particular individual property with us. I always tell people when they call me with a concern, if you think the assessment is wrong, make sure you file the appeal within the timely deadline. That is their right, and that is protecting their rights. So if they have a doubt, make sure that they do file that. Don't wait for us to have a public meeting for a group. They need to file that. They can always withdraw it if they decide to afterwards, but they do need to make sure they protect their rights.
Thank you. The deadline is coming, right, for appeal?
Yes, February 13th, I believe. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're coming to the end of my list here. Delegate Fair, Delegate Palakovich-Carr, and then Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everyone. This has been truly illuminating, this past couple of hours. I just had a few questions about the appeals process as well. I know we've talked a lot about it today, and I really appreciate everything that you've expanded on so far. The first is just a clarification from my colleague's question. You will be able to provide demographic breakdown based on property values of the people who apply for appeals for residential. Is that correct?
No.
No.
We don't keep racial demographic information. Are you looking for a racial breakdown?
Property value breakdown.
Property value, yes.
Right. Yes,
Okay.
We can do that by residential, condominiums, commercial properties. We can do that.
But you do not carry any other demographic breakdown information? Okay, very good. Is there any filing fees for applying, for appealing assessments at any level?
No, but we might consider that for commercial appeals when every commercial account basically appeals their account and then doesn't show up at 70–80% of the time. It's a pretty big problem on the commercial side, but on the residential side, we wouldn't advocate for anything like that.
Yeah.
Just when we talk about that, there is no appeal fee for filing that. And the director was talking about the commercial appeals. For the last 3 years, the commercial appeals we are typically handled by professional companies, attorneys, professional appeal corporations that file things. They make up anywhere from a third to a half of our appeals annually. Mm-hmm. And our biggest issue with that is certainly because they're complex, they take longer. But also we get, they file these appeals every year. It's not when they get a reassessment notice, they file an out-of-cycle appeal every year. So for example, for the last few years, every year Royal Farms files an appeal for every property they have in the state. PNC Bank files an appeal for every property they have in the state. We have corporations like that. Walmart does the same thing, that they, every year, it's not a matter of, is it a correct value? It's can we get a lower value? Because it's a no-lose situation. It doesn't cost them anything to appeal, so they file it every single year to try and get the assessments lower. And it takes a tremendous amount of our time and resources.
Does your office have a recommendation for how to address that issue?
Fees for commercial assessments, an application fee for commercial assessment would be the way I would solve that.
Okay. Are there any legal support services available for folks who are going through the appeal process if they can't afford an attorney themselves?
You don't need an attorney for any of the 3 levels of the appeal process for properties in Maryland. In fact, we'd rather not see them at the first level for certain.
Yeah.
But it's even at the Maryland Tax Court, you're not required to have an attorney present with you.
Sure. And my final question is just that I noticed on the website you have 30 days from the date of final decision made at each level. Is that decision mailed to the individual? I only mentioned because I just got my holiday card that was postmarked from December 5th in the mail yesterday. So,
oh my.
Do you all mail out those decisions or email?
They are required by law to be mailed.
Mm-hmm.
We can, if the person asks it be sent by email and provides an email address, we will send it to them by email also. Okay. But they do get the mailed copy.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here and for all of the information today. I actually wanted to ask a question along the lines of the questions that Delegate Wilkins raised about inequities in our system. And it sounds like SDAT is looking to make sure there's consistency within neighborhoods. But I want to ask the flip side of that coin, which is looking for consistency of assessments across neighborhoods. Because of the history of redlining in this state, we know that there are still certain neighborhoods that are viewed as less desirable for racial or socioeconomic reasons. Does SDAT do any kind of analysis at a more meta level to make sure that we are not propagating or continuing those kind of inequities as we do our tax assessments, and particularly across neighborhoods?
We certainly do not, well, we don't have the demographics as far as the racial makeup of each neighborhood. We are looking strictly at the economics of it. What do the homes sell for in a given neighborhood? What we are really looking at, among other things, is are we consistent within that neighborhood, that we are at the appropriate ratios to compare that to other neighborhoods, particularly of different economic strata. We do a price-related differential that looks at, are properties, say in Potomac, that are high valued, are they assessed at the same percentage of value based on the sales data as something that's in a less economically developed area or a lower economic group? Even looking at the studies that were done, the recommendations of the people that did the studies was to use these small groups, like what actually they were recommending larger groups than what SDAT uses. But to be fair, to look at small groups of properties, they sit down to zip code areas or census tracts, but we break things down into much smaller groups. We then do the price-related differential to make sure that they are all valued on a consistent basis on a percentage of the value of the property compared to the sale prices.
And through these statistical analysis after the fact, we're going to spot neighborhoods that are far outside of the range that we're seeing in other surrounding neighborhoods. And what really does protect the homeowners in Maryland is these small neighborhood groupings that we use. That's what keeps bias from coming into, from creeping into the situation. And really the fact that, again, it's only used for taxation purposes, to the extent it's still below market values, any errors have only been, would only seek to lower taxes.
On that, so are you saying then that the neighborhood adjustment factor, that's where that would come into play? So if you saw a neighborhood that was an outlier, you would use the neighborhood adjustment factor to make changes there?
A couple things. First of all, as far as our neighborhoods, when we talk about them, that may be just a subdivision of properties, and that might be as little as a conclave of 40 or 50 properties. It might be a neighborhood that's got, 2,000 properties on it that Ryan Homes has built. I go back, the big one in Prince George's County was always, I think, Levittown. That was done. That was a huge neighborhood. But we are looking at properties that are similar economically to make sure that they are all treated the same. We don't go into houses, and when you do any of the assessment processes, one of the things we have to be careful about is we don't want to say, if you have a particular neighborhood, you don't want to go to somewhere else that's not similar and get your values, your sales from there. Because you could say, well, it's balanced out geographically that this community is not equitable. We don't want to just ignore the fact of what's happening in that particular neighborhood. Yeah, does that explain what I'm trying to do? In that, we don't want to pull something from an area that is not economically similar to use to value that property, because that creates inequities in itself of over-assessing some neighborhoods and under-assessing others.
And if I could drop one more point in, all of the data, all of the assessment data that we produce is publicly available. So you can go on the real property data search, find out what a particular property was assessed for. You can find out what all your neighbors' assessments are, what yours is for. And if you see differences that need to be fixed, by all means, go in and appeal. But you can really see, if you believe there are biases in the assessment data, the data's all there. Find them and let us know. I'd be more than happy to look into it. But I think that we have taken all the appropriate measures in Maryland to protect against the sort of things that we've heard about and seen in other places across the country.
Okay, well, there are no further questions from the Delegate Vogel. Delegate Vogel has a question, and they have to get over to a 1:30 hearing in the Senate. Go ahead, Delegate Vogel.
I will keep it very quick. Thank you all for spending time with us today and for a very informative presentation. I just want to zero in quickly on the renter's tax credit. First of all, I see on your website that the reasoning for this program is that renters indirectly pay taxes on their property, and the portion of rent attributable to the assumed property. How do you assess what amount of the rent is attributable to the tax?
Actually 15% of the base occupancy rent. So it'd be 15% of the rent that's attributable to just the rent on the four walls. Does not include any utilities that are included or any other services that are included as part of the rent. So we factor those items out. If let's say, for example, gas and electric or heat is included, we factor those utilities out. We look at what's left. We assume that 15% of the base occupancy rent is the assumed property taxes subject to credit that landlord is paying on that unit. Okay. Then we go from there. Look at income, determine eligibility for tax credit. If they're eligible, they receive a check, one-time check, anywhere from $1 to $1,000.
Understood. Thank you. And Just on the imbalance between tax credits issued for homeowners versus renters, right? It's 6,600 versus 38,000, $55.4 million versus $3 million. I think that's in line with the amount budgeted for both of those programs, but can you just explain to us that imbalance?
And that is because in terms of the homeowners tax credit program, if you basically own the property and you live in it, you can apply for a homeowners tax credit based on your income. However, with the renter's tax credit, there are limitations. You have to be age 60 or over, or 100% totally and permanently disabled. Or if you're under 60 and you're not disabled, you have to meet certain poverty threshold guidelines. So there are some limitations for the renter's tax credit program as opposed to.
Got it. Understood. Thank you so much.
It's also far more difficult for us to do outreach on renters than it is homeowners. So we have a very good way of getting homeowners that are eligible for but haven't applied for the homeowners. We have no similar way of getting to all the renters out there that might be eligible for this program and letting them know.
And have there been efforts to address those outreach concerns?
We actually have our homeowners and renters awareness program that we do every year. So every year we try to we get some information from our real property assessment offices, and we try to reach out to our renters every year. We do like a mass mailing, yeah, right,
because of the difficulty of getting them.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Speaking of the renters, I think it's worth taking a look at, whether it's for this body or I don't know if you all have taken a look at it. The renters, I believe you mentioned they have to apply every year. Perhaps they could submit their lease and show how long they would be in that property so that they wouldn't have to apply every year. And it could just be ongoing for as long as their lease is. But with that, I want to say thank you very much. You have been here with us for over 2 hours answering a significant amount of questions. So thank you very much. I mean, it's your first time here. We had to kind of put you through it, so, you know. Committee, just sit tight for a minute, but that concludes the hearing for the Ways and Means Committee today. Thank you. I just want to briefly mention, committee, that from time to time, if you're a returning member, you already know this, but from time to time, we will have hearings that are jointly assigned. And so you saw Delegate Barnes and Delegate Wilkins get up. They were going over to appropriations. The schedule's changed, so they'll be going back. But if you hear from committee staff that you are assigned to a bill that we have with another committee, we generally will send 2 or 3 people.